G'day and welcome again to another Campfire Project Panel Discussion. And today I have with me, first of all, Nathan Segal. How are you, Nathan?
Just fine, thanks. Sorry about the lighting.
That's okay, mate. No, it's evening where you are. Because you're over in Mexico. And can you pronounce the place that you had just mentioned that you were in?
Well, for the day I was with my girlfriend in a small town called Ajijic, but where I'm actually staying is a place called Tlajumulco de Zúñiga, which is a large suburb to the southwest of Guadalajara, which is more or less smack in the middle of Mexico.
There we go. So good. Yeah. What time is it by the way, over there?
20 minutes after 8 in the evening.
So it's, and here in Australia, it's 20 past 12 in the afternoon. And then we have Sean, who's up there in Brisbane. Sean McBride. How are you, Sean?
I'm great, Alan. Thank you. And Brisbane's a lot easier to pronounce.
Certainly is. And time difference, though, it looks like I'm the one who's in the future at the moment, because what is it? It's just getting on towards 11:30. Yeah.
Something, yeah.
Tomorrow. Well, for me, it's tomorrow. Okay, let me think. It's what? Wednesday evening. So it's Thursday for you.
Yeah. So. I love this technology and the fact that we're able to come together from all over the place. And the other thing to do is, what were you going to say, Nathan?
It makes my brain hurt sometimes when I think that I'm talking to you tomorrow. It's like,
That's it. But also the diversity of the places that we're in, but also the diversity of the stuff that you do. Because, Nathan, you're also at the moment helping people to eliminate social anxiety, whereas, Sean, you're also the founder of the Mammoth Hunting Club and the Wilderness Skills instructor. So both of you bring a wealth of different knowledge from different fields together. And coming into the panel discussions, it really is a mixing part of being able to bring ideas and things together, which I really love this, and getting that knowledge from each person and having your input into it. But today we were going to talk about prosperity. And Sean, this was your suggestion, so this is where I take the ball and pass it over to you. What was the reason what brought that to mind? What were you thinking about?
I knew you were going to throw it at me. Well, I was reading a piece by Mark Manson, who I quite liked the other day, and kind of got me thinking about a few things. And when people think of prosperity, they normally think of, it usually comes down to money, but prosperity can be many other things like that. And it got me thinking about a time many years ago when I was I'd driven up to Newcastle. I was actually going to I think I was going to a rebirthing seminar or a weekend, and I was riding my motorbike, and the weather turned bad. It was freezing. I got as far as Sydney, and I was just frozen. And I went into a coffee shop and sat down and decided that not going any further, I'd stay in Sydney. But at that time, I didn't know anyone in Sydney, and I had cash at the time. I had plenty of cash. And I remember that it was a fairly miserable time for me because of the lack of connection with anyone up there. And what I found was that, I had money. So in one level, I was prosperous, but I didn't actually know anyone in Sydney. So it was quite a lonely night spent there. And it got me thinking about other times in my life. And I know that there've been times when I've had money and been happy, no money and been happy, money and unhappy, no money and unhappy. So it brings up the conclusion that money is not the key.
Right, exactly.
I'm just curious what if you want to add anything to that, Nathan. That's just my recent thinking on it.
That's actually, there's a lot of truth to what you're saying, because I've been having a lot of issues with money myself, and but it's a lot of it has to do with like finding a particular direction to do with it, because one of the things that I've realized is to do with money. The money is actually not the problem. The problem is creating a structure or a vehicle for it to come to you. And the way that I think of it is like a bridge. So you're building a bridge to create a structure, if you will, for the money which is sitting over here, which is abundant, and you're sitting over here, but you've got this bridge that's unfinished. And until that bridge is finished, you can't receive the money. And when the bridge is finished and everything's done in a particular way, then it can come to you easily. That's my way of thinking about it. But the other, geez, it brings up a lot of other stuff to do with this whole prosperity thing. Because like for years, I've been asking myself three questions, what can I do that will benefit a lot of people? How can I have fun doing it? And how can I make a lot of money? And what recently happened, I was reading a book called Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort. He's a guy that they made a movie about him called The Wolf of Wall Street. But in the book, and I was reading all this stuff, and I had several epiphanies around the same time that I realized in the book that Jordan's saying he's a natural born salesman. And what I realized after a little while is my natural born skill is that I'm a natural connector. Now, somebody told me that years ago, but it never, penetrated until then. And then I realized, my number one skill is connecting with people and creating relationships. And then in the process of playing with that and working with it a bit, I realized that, well, yeah, a lot of people do want to know how to talk to each other, but the thing that I'm seeing that's bothering a lot of people more than anything else is social anxiety. And then I'm coming up and saying, hey guys, your social anxiety is not a problem. You don't need medication for it. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're just thinking about things the wrong way. And if I could show you how to fix that, you wouldn't have social anxiety anymore. So as for the prosperity side of it, I've just been kind of wrestling with it. Like, how do I package this? Because I have all this knowledge, which is really easy for me to implement and show people how to do stuff. Like it literally show people how to do everything I need to show them in an hour. So how do I package something like that? Where's the value? The prosperity side of it, I'm just going, wow, I don't know yet.
I like the way you put that, Nathan, because that's been something that I've thought about for a long time. Because many years ago, I did. You've heard of Robert Kiyosaki, I assume.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah. Well, before Robert was wealthy, he was running a program called Money and You, and creating wealth. And under the kind of like harassment of my girlfriend at the time, I went along and did it. And
cool.
And Robert's a lovely guy, a really nice man. And I did the course, both courses. They cost a chunk of money at the time, but I did both the courses, and really interesting and some great ideas that I still resonate with today and still kind of implement. But I didn't. It's like you're saying about the bridge. I term it like a vehicle. There's got to be a vehicle that crosses your bridge to bring you the money on the other side. And at the time I did his course, I didn't have a vehicle, and I think that's the thing that I found also with a lot of people that do, say, for instance, Tony Robbins courses. I remember going to some of their after group meetings, and I like Tony Robbins, a great guy. I think he does a lot of good in the world. But what I noticed was that a lot of people would do his courses, and they would come away and they'd be buzzing, and then life would go on. They'd settle back in their normal life again, and then they'd go and spend another $20,000 to do
go to another
university, the Tony Robbins University or whatever it might be, and then they'd come back and they'd still be doing the same thing, and then it finally clicked to me that the only thing that was not there, the missing ingredient, was the vehicle that they would implement his teaching. And same with Robert Kiyosaki. At the time, I was just working in a crappy job for the state government, inputting. This is when I was like 20 or something, inputting census data, and there's nothing more mindless than doing that. It's not it's not exactly a vehicle for wealth, and so what everyone has to find is that vehicle, which, and you put it really nicely, Nathan, those three questions you asked yourself. I think it was like, how can you help other people? How can you have fun doing it? And how can you make money?
Yeah. That's
so, it's finding that vehicle that has all those elements that then carries you across the bridge to prosperity.
And before we even do that, it's a matter of looking at, well, what is prosperity in the first place? Because is it the money, or is the money just a measure of the prosperity you have? Because until you got that, the vehicle itself, you don't really know what that vehicle is going to look like, I don't think.
I think,
Yeah,
I think there's an element of purpose here too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
very
just
much
been
so.
sitting here and just going, how in the world do I package this? I've been thinking about it for weeks, right? But it seems like the smartest way to do it is just to create a video that just goes over all of the main points, created as some sort of simple, like a tripwire, if you will, offer, with upsells to like ongoing coaching where I literally work with people to help them overcome these things at a deeper level. Because one of the other things would be limiting beliefs and all that kind of stuff, all that kind of baggage. But the real problem with something like social anxiety is actually very simple. I mean, and I learned about this myself through life experience, because when I was a kid, like being a connector, and I didn't know this until years later, but I remember I was 9 years old and moved into a brand new neighborhood. We were on the corner of one cul-de-sac, and there were two of them across the street from each other, this huge loop. And on each cul-de-sac was 20 houses, roughly. And so I was 9 years old. I didn't have any friends. And so one morning I just went out door knocking, and I knocked on the door of every single house in our cul-de-sac, made a ton of friends, met a lot of people, amused a whole bunch of adults who thought that it was kind of cool with this 9-year-old kid. And it spilled over to my family and my parents and everything else. But the thing about the social anxiety, where that came into play, where it kicked into my life, is when dating showed up, and it had to do with being interested in girls. And that's where I developed the social anxiety, all this inner fear, and then realizing years later, oh, I know what it did. Because when I was 9 years old, I had no fear at all. It didn't even enter my mind.
Those kids don't know.
So, but later I learned this somehow, and then I became like so many other people. And then when I realized, oh, I know what I'm doing wrong. And then when I was working on a podcast with a colleague of mine a couple of years ago, I put all the pieces together and realized, oh, I know how to solve this problem. And it's really easy. And the problem with the social anxiety, or any anxiety really, is it has to do with what you're thinking about. And you're projecting into the future, and you're creating all these terrible stories for yourself, which creates this disconnect within, which creates this thing called anxiety. Now, with the social anxiety, the major mistake that all these people are making is real simple: focusing on themselves. What if they think badly of me? Are my teeth brown? Do I look like I'm wearing cheap clothing? Is my haircut good? What if I say the wrong thing and they start sweating bullets and all that? So the major mistake is that they're focused on themselves. And the simple solution: turn your energy outwards and focus it on everybody else. So when you walk into a social situation, you're not thinking about yourself. You're looking for opportunities where you can engage with others. So let's say I walk into a networking meeting, and I'm just standing there and I'm listening. I travel around the room and I listen to people, and I listen to the conversations from maybe 5 feet away. See if I can find something that interests me. So let's say I discover a group of people and they're talking about solar energy, which I really like. And so I listened to it for a while, and I discovered that this one person is pretty much holding the floor. And I like what he's talking about. So I say to him, hey, I've been listening to you talk about this aspect of solar energy. I like what you have to say. Can you tell me more? And then, of course, that person will turn to me and start giving me an answer. And so what I do is I listen very carefully to what I'm being told. And I use that to build another question based on what I've been given, and I feed it back. Do that enough times, I'm going to relax, they're going to relax, I'm going to be welcomed into the group. And if I continue to focus on them rather than me, the social anxiety will vanish, and comfort will ensue, internal comfort, and I might even wind up making some new friends. And so that's the simple mechanics of it. The other piece of it is something called active listening. And the active listening is where I'm listening to people, listening to what they have to say, forgetting about anything I want to say at all. Because that's another mistake that people make. They want others to be interested in them. But in a lot of cases, nobody really cares. They want to talk about themselves. So if you give them that opportunity, what's in it for me? I don't care about you, but how can you let me shine?
You know, well, the best conversationalists that people will point to is, oh, they're really great conversationalists. They're the ones that just really listened and didn't say much at all, just asked a few questions. The one who's doing all the talking is the one who had the message to get across, and they're the ones that are saying the other person was brilliant to talk to.
Yeah,
so it sounds like from that you have the vehicle that you need to become, to move towards that prosperity. So the next thing is then how do you turn that into achieving prosperity? And first of all, well, back to that question again, what is prosperity to each of us? Is it the money, or is the money just a measure of it? What would you put it down to in your case, Sean?
Oh, well, I saw this quote the other day, which I'll try and remember, but it was pretty close to this, that money is just a symbol of freedom, and the only reason you want money is to give you the time to give you the freedom to be able to use your creativity to contribute whatever it is about you that's different to the world, something along that line. And I thought that was pretty good. You know, it's kind of like the reason that we're not following our kind of heart's desires or maybe contributing is because we're always too busy trying to get. You know, we got to get this, we got to get that, we got to get ahead. We're busy trying to achieve it. If you have let's say the money, which represents a symbol of freedom, then you've got that getting is no longer the issue, the getting of money to give you the freedom. You've got it. Once you have that, then your mind is free to concentrate on other things that are much more in tune with your perhaps purpose for being here. I think that's really the sole aim of money.
Yeah, so sort of the question is, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, survival at the bottom, self-actualization, that type of thing at the top, where does our thinking start to shift towards actually moving towards prosperity? And where is it just really about survival, having that food on the table, making sure, where it's all about us, how do I survive today? And then to the point of, well, now you're living more on purpose as you're going up that scale.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere about level 3 from the bottom, from memory, if I remember the hierarchy properly. Once you get the earlier stuff out of the way and some of the interpersonal relationship stuff and whatever, if you can get to a level of freedom, then you've got the opportunity to channel your true purpose here.
Because I liken it to the generations, like survival. The very base level is my parents and people who went through wars. They were the builders. Where's our food for today? And we were told about security. So where's our food for tomorrow? And the next level up, once you've got that, I've got my food today, I got my food for tomorrow, shelter, etc. Now I want to be recognised. But it's when we get to that fourth level, as you said, when we start, and this is where the Gen Ys were coming in, what about family? They start looking at the group, they start looking outward instead of inward. So it's, good point.
Well, and just, I guess maybe it's slightly off topic, but it all kind of ties in. What Nathan was saying before about, this, and I think that's a good vehicle actually that he's talking about. I think he's already got the idea for the vehicle to prosperity in his mind. It's just the detail that needs to be worked out. Years ago, I found I was always socially anxious in group settings in like pubs and clubs and things like that when I was going out meeting people and whatever. And just at one stage I was investigating, the whole human attraction thing from an anthropology point of view. So I would go to a club or a nightclub and I'd roam around, I'd meet people in order to hook them up with other people. And I really enjoyed doing that. And because I was projecting away from me and just considering them, I didn't have any social anxiety because it wasn't about me. And by the end of the night, I would know everyone in the place and someone would walk past and I'd say, oh, you've got to meet Jim over here and or whatever. And they'd say, do you work for this place? How come you know everyone? And it was because I was putting myself out there trying to do something for them. And I would hook men and women up, and they'd say, "Are you a date doctor?" And I wasn't. I was just kind of having fun. And in the process, you know, it gave me social proof. So I didn't even have to really work that hard. And some girls would say, "Well, you know, I really like hanging out with you," and off you go, you know. So I think there's a lot in what Nathan was saying.
I like what you had to say about that. I'm just making a quick note about connecting people. Like one of my colleagues, her name is Teresa de Grosbois. She wrote a book called Mass Influence, and it's a lot about connecting people. And I realized that this would be a really great way of taking the focus. Sorry, I just making a quick note of self. It's brilliant because it's something that it would be great exercise to give to people as a way to overcome the social anxiety. Sorry, I'm just making a quick note because it's really important.
Well, it's a point that will go well into what you're doing. So yeah, make sure you
Absolutely.
write it down. One thing I've loved about the panel discussion the other night, Sean Carson was on here as well, and he's got his pen and he's writing notes. Every time he comes on, he's writing notes. This is what I love about it. We're not only discussing things, but we're all learning from each other at the same time. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is brilliant because it's a really great exercise. Now, if I started talking to people and say, okay, one of the things you need to do is take the focus off yourself. So my approach is one thing. But what you said is also really brilliant too and extremely useful because if you start putting yourself in the position of being a connector and meeting people, that's another really great way to take all the energy off yourself. You don't have to worry about anything you're going to say, really. And like you were saying, oh, Sean, you know, or Peter over here, you need to meet X person over here. It's a brilliant strategy. I mean, there was one other thing that I did, and it was completely by accident. It wasn't about really getting to know anybody, but it was creating a kind of dissonance and confusion, which actually really helped me a lot. I was at a party once, a ski club, and we all had to wear name tags. That's normal, right? Well, somebody was leaving, and they took their name tag off and stuck it on my shirt. So I had two. And then I had this bright idea. And so what I did is I started collecting name tags. And by the end of the night, I was wearing like 10 different name tags, and nobody knew what to call me.
I love it.
And it created all this.
For that. I'm sure there's a doctor to look after that one.
Maybe. But they were just looking at me going, who are you anyway? Well, pick a name.
Yeah.
Hey, there's one for you. They pick the name, and then you tell them a story about who that person is.
Yeah, it was really silly. But there are different ways of. Sorry, I'm just writing this down again to just as an idea. But there was another thing that I did, and I was invited to a Halloween party, and I got this idea and I thought, oh, I like this. This is brilliant. Because a way to get people to pay attention to you without actually having to do anything special. You go to one of those automotive stores and you buy those white painter's coveralls that are made out of paper. And they have a zip and a hood and all that stuff. And then you go to a stationery store and you buy some of those big felt marking pens. And so you would maybe draw a design of something on one part of the coveralls. And then when you're at the Halloween party, you're walking around with a big handful of these markers. And somebody says to you, well, you know, what's your costume about? Well, it's a costume where you can draw whatever you feel like drawing on my coveralls. Please don't be rude. And you hand them and they go, oh, wow. And then they just like little children, right? And they draw all sorts of designs or write stories. And by the end of the night, you're literally covered with messages and markers and drawings. And a tremendous amount of fun and a great way of drawing attention without doing anything special.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
That's beauty. Yeah.
So,
and again, it's all about them. It's not about you. You're just the canvas that they're going to be drawing on or writing on.
Quite literally, you become a walking billboard.
Yes, I love that. Then, Sean, you can take that outfit and then walk around and go, you need to talk to, and you need to talk to.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you wanted to attract women, I don't. I mean, I know a whole bunch of other stuff to do with that, but the ways of attracting attention in ways that most people wouldn't think of, that could be a tremendous amount of fun. I mean, I could pretty much guarantee, even if you did that in the middle of the day, walking into a Starbucks with that or some other popular place, and inevitably people would come up and, what are you doing? Oh, well, here.
When I was doing that with the in the nightclubs and stuff, one thing I noticed was that people were so reluctant to actually approach other people, and that's men or women, because I would say to these women, so who around here do you see that you like? And they go, oh, I like him over there. And I said, well, why don't you go up and talk to him? Oh no, I couldn't do that. But then I'd have to play wingman, and I'd go up and start chatting to the guy, and then she'd come up and I'd say, oh, you haven't met my friend Julie here, and off they go, and it's just interesting. Yeah. It often needs a catalyst to bring the people together, because perhaps you're on a thing there, Nathan, that just about everyone has social anxiety at some degree.
Yeah.
So is that social anxiety then virtually the opposite of prosperity? Is it a reason for people not moving into that place of prosperity, the fear of the unknown, etc., or the fear of stepping out?
Well, you know how they say, in terms of, like, say, from a free market system, that if you want to make money, you either sell a lot of products to a particular product to a lot of people at a low price, or you sell a high ticket item to a few people at a high price. Well, you can't do any of that. Prosperity must have a component of interacting with people. You often see people talk about, oh, he's a self-made millionaire. And I think, if anyone's self-made, how do you be a self-made millionaire? Does someone simply come along and give you $1 million? No, you had to actually interact with people.
That's it.
Yeah.
A component of prosperity, it seems to me, would have to be developing people skills to some degree to be able to interact.
And the other one is a comment, it took me 15 years to become an overnight success.
Exactly. You often see that with Hollywood stars, people think, oh, yeah, look, they're so easy. They just, they pop up out of the blue, but you don't realize until you see some old movies that they've been in, that they were an extra in this one and had a really small part in that one, and on and on and on for 10 years or more. And then suddenly they just hit the jackpot with a movie that limelighted them.
That's right. And all the rest of the time they were sitting there making coffee for you or bringing your food to the table.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I can use an anecdote like that because I actually know of one. There were 3 actors, one of whom was a friend of mine. And there were 2 other actors who were a part of this group called Back Alley Theatre at City Stage in Vancouver, 1983, thereabouts. And these 2 guys, Colin Mockery and Ryan Stiles, were brilliant comedians, very funny. They worked together extremely well. Well, it took a long time before I finally saw them really having any major success. Ryan wound up on the Drew Carey show, and then they also had another show called Whose Line Is It Anyway? And I was watching the 2 of them and their antics, but they were that good in 1983 as opposed to now. And the woman who's on the piano, Laura, that was my friend Laura. Her name was Janishevsky. We used to hang out in a place called Benny's Bagels in Vancouver, and I had often wondered, geez, I wonder where she got to. And then I see her on the show with all these other guys. I went, oh, cool. But the thing that struck me about it is what they are doing now is exactly the same kind of stuff that they were doing back then, except something finally caught up to the 2 of them, and it propelled them into the limelight and made them famous. So what surprised me about it more than anything else is how long it took.
Yeah.
Considering how good they are.
I think look, there's people often say, hard work and all the rest of it. And that's true. There's an element of luck. There's an element of luck in it as well. And there's also, because I got involved in acting later in life, just for fun more than anything. And I've been in a few films now. But
Cool.
what I found was that, you know, there are, you know, if you want a profession to make money in, then acting wouldn't be it, unless, you know, you're one of the few. And what happens is, you know, people go to these auditions on a constant basis, and they keep getting rejected and rejected and rejected. And then finally someone thinks, oh yeah, I like the way they did that, or yeah, they're just the person I had in mind, you know. And it's not a personal rejection of them. It's just they have an idea in their head of how the person should be. Someone comes along and fits that bill, and they say yes. And I don't know if you know the actor Mark Ruffalo, who plays the Hulk in the Marvel.
Oh yeah. He was in obscurity for quite a while, and then something happened.
He was on the Graham Norton show, and he went for what was it, 600. He got rejected, 600 auditions. And they said to him, why didn't you stop? And he said, because I didn't think there was anything else I could do. You know, I didn't have any talent or anything else. And then finally, away he went. So there's an element of persistence in this. You know, people nowadays, I think, are used to instant gratification for so many things. They don't realize that to build a career or a business actually takes a certain amount of time and a certain amount of consistency and turning up every day. And if you don't do that, if you just do something for 3 months and you don't immediately become a multi-millionaire, it's like, oh, this isn't working, give it away. But you know, a lot of it is exposure. And it's the same thing for you, Nathan, with this idea of the doing the video and coaching people, that it would go along. You know, once you started getting some exposure, you go along, a bit more exposure, and then suddenly it's like a what do they call that on a graph?
Exponential curve.
Something like that. So suddenly it just skyrockets at a certain point, but you've put in X amount of time before that, so that a critical mass of people know about you, and it just takes that extra step, and suddenly boom, off you go.
I think it's that, as you said, as it starts to take off as well, it's that lead up to it, that perseverance that you've put in that's giving you some resilience, so that when it does take off, you've got a chance of it lasting longer. I see things that are very quick, that you get into very quickly and get them started, they also die quickly.
Yeah, good
There's
point.
a certain component to actually having to do the hard yards. But what are we teaching our kids today? They get a trophy for turning up. You know, they're special. Instead of saying to them, you have inside of you what are the makings to be special, and our job is to help you bring that out. We just tell them they're already special. We don't take that responsibility on of taking our role in place and guiding them. And we wonder why they crash and burn and give up so quickly.
Yeah. I think resilience is a good point. You've got to get rejection in life to actually build up some strength to cope with rejection, because nothing's going to go smoothly all the time.
Yeah, there is another instance I was dealing with a few years ago to do with freelance writing. And I wound up in a LinkedIn group, and what I discovered is that the abundance of the people in the group were broke or not doing very well. They wanted to be writers. But I remember writing a squeeze page, opt-in page, and it had a very hard-hitting headline, because one of the things I noticed about these people is that there was a lot of entitlement issues, a lot of stuff to do with talent issues, and all this belief that the world should be kissing their butts because they're good writers. And so I wrote this page, and I said, you know, I wrote at the top, if you make any of these 3 freelance writing mistakes, you can kiss your career goodbye. And then I talk about what those mistakes are. And I said, talent is important, but it's no guarantee of success. There are many talented broke writers. I said that in reality, there's only one thing that's going to make the difference between success and failure, and that one thing is marketing. And without it, your career could be over before you know it. And then I go into the thing, you know, that ends today, sign up for a free report, blah, blah, blah. But I found an enormous amount of entitlement issues. People were yelling at me about talent, and I had one guy, and it still astonishes me to this day. They were saying, oh, well, you got lucky, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, I didn't get lucky. I worked my butt off to learn what I learned to be able to do this. And I had one idiot say to me, I demand that you give me your course materials for free, and then I demand that you get me a job at the end of it. You can imagine what I told them.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. Just couldn't believe it. Yeah, no kidding. But I ran into that even when I was in training, because there was a woman who demanded my client list. And I'm looking at her going, you don't even work in the same area that I do. It would be worthless to you. And then she demanded the list of my mentor. And we compared notes one day and realized that this woman was just, well, in Yiddish, we would call her a schmuck. But she just wasn't willing to do any of the work and expected us to hand her all this stuff. And I'm going, no, you have to build your own client list. My client list isn't going to help you. You want to write about potted plants. I write about computer graphics. How's this going to help you? You're going to try and sell them on how to do potted plants on the computer? I don't think so.
But even if they're in exactly the same field, they're in exactly the same. So even if they're in exactly the same field, they still don't have the right to do that, because it's not theirs. You've gone to the trouble of doing the work, put the hard yards in, you've achieved it. I've had people say to me that they wanted me to coach them and mentor them free of charge. And I said, well, why? And they say, but you're up the top. You're at this point, you should be giving it away now. And
I've heard that many times, And
you go, well, how are you going to move forward yourself? As you said, Sean, they've got to put that time in. They've got to have a few hard knocks. They're going to learn from all of that. That gives them the resilience.
And that brings up the issue of mindset for prosperity as well, doesn't it?
Sure, of course.
Everyone's carrying around a whole set of beliefs that may or may not be useful to their path in life.
That's true.
I don't think of them as negative or positive. I just think of them as useful or not as useful. And you know, if you have issues about money, or you think you know, I'll never be a success, or I'm not good enough, or any of those things, then obviously prosperity is going to be a harder path for you than for other people who feel that money comes to me easily, or you know, life is a smooth path, you know, whatever.
You know, as you said, with the, you mentioned being what's it, positive or less positive, or less valuable, whatever. Yeah, what was it? Yeah, useful. That's the word. That's what I was trying to get to. Instead of going what's right and what's wrong, what's you know, what's good and what's bad. As you said, it's coming back to everything's got a level of usefulness, but some are more useful than others. And some of the most useful things in your life are going to be some of the hardest knocks you get, because of what they teach you and what you take from it.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like the whole thing of social anxiety came up when I was doing something else and reading a book called Way of the Wolf. And where the sudden understanding, or the sudden realization came, was when I was reading about a moment to do in the movie Forrest Gump. And what happened there. And then I remember having my own Forrest Gump moment as taking acting training years ago. And then that led into other things, and all these things, there was a cascade in my mind. And then the recognition of my number one natural skill that was so obvious and so close to me that I never thought it was valuable, and I never thought of anybody even paying me for it. I mean, it never even occurred to me until I went through that, and I realized, oh, that's what my number one skill is. And what I want to do is, when I refine this enough that I have a decent system in place, I want to go to Jordan Belfort directly and say, I want to talk to you because I got something here that's really going to help you and all your salespeople that you work with. And, you know, that's a hard pitch, of course, but I would say to him, look, you need to give me a little bit of time. I can explain this to you in 5 minutes and see what happens. Because, like, this natural born salesman, okay, you've got this particular skill and you can transfer a lot of what you know to other people. But what if the person has social anxiety? What if they get really tripped up in their own minds by this stuff? How do you help them? And there are lots of tools for it. Isn't it? Well, for salespeople, it's an obvious thing, because they have to interact with others.
For sure. It was interesting. You know, you were saying that you were doing one thing and it led to another. You know, most people take action, even if it's not the right action at the time, to get them directly to what they want to get to. Sometimes it leads on to other things. And when I was reading the stuff by Mark Manson the other day, I thought it was quite interesting. He said he had this belief that, you know, he had this dream that he wanted to be a rock star, and he could spend ages just sitting around dreaming about him on stage, the crowd going wild, these big gigs and you know, adulation of the fans. And then he never did anything with it. He was a musician, but he never did anything with it. He did other things. And he realized that he was in love with the goal, but not the process that led to it. So he didn't really want to, you know, go and work in little dives and carry lots of gear around and all that leading up to, you know, a few years of work until he actually got a big job on stage. And I think that's the case with all of us, that I think you've got to enjoy the process that's leading to whatever it is that whatever vehicle you're using for prosperity. If it's not fun, as Nathan was saying with those 3 questions, if it's not fun, then why would you spend 10 years of your life pursuing it just to get to the end goal, which might be money or whatever? You know, like, it's like that old thing of like, when I get X, I'll be happy. When I get Y, I'll be happy. And in fact, if you're not happy now, that's the bit you have to deal with. You have to deal with being happy now, because when you get the money, it's not going to change things. Because I've known people who've had plenty of money and had very miserable lives, and people who've been very happy as well. So, you know, but the process, it's the process, the journey, that should be fun. If it's not fun, you've just wasted X amount of years.
Well, as you said, once you get there, you're there. That's only a moment in time. So anything that you're feeling, it's over in that moment.
Exactly.
But the thing that, you know, as you said, it's a journey going there, going through that process, because that you savor every day. And you can look at all those things that may not be going the right way and go, well, what value are they really bringing to me? How can I use that to get me closer to that goal that I'm after? Because once you reach the goal anyway, you should be setting a new goal. So it's always going to be a journey. It's never going to be a destination.
Exactly. And I know from my own life, and I think I mentioned this before in another talk, Alan, that when I got my Green Beret from the military, you know, it was kind of like a bit disappointing. You know, I spent a couple of years to get to that point, and I got this Green Beret and I went, what now? You know, I was a bit lost. And when I achieved, you know, my university degree, or when I achieved this or achieved that, whatever, it was kind of like, what now? And if I didn't enjoy the journey, then the payoff really wasn't worth it anyway.
That's it.
Yeah, that's true. And it's human nature for the what now. And yeah, I've experienced that many times before too. You get to this point, you go, great, now what do I do?
That's it. You know, started looking at prosperity. We've looked at the vehicles. We've looked at what the journey itself. We've looked at destinations. There's a hell of a lot in looking at the prosperity, and each person listening to this are going to have different views on where they're coming from and their own view of it. It's quite a complex thing, isn't it? It's not just I just want to be prosperous. But it's a process of, well, what is prosperity to you? How does your prosperity differ to somebody else? At what point in your journey do you feel like you're getting it to that level, you're on the right track? It's quite an involved one.
Well, it's tied to success, isn't it? You know, what's success for you? What's prosperity for you? Everyone has a bit of a different idea.
It's kind of like what's been happening in my life as of late, which I mentioned earlier before the discussion. You know, just finishing up a house sit for some people, and a month before finishing that, being invited by a friend of mine to house sit for him, and thinking, and so that was fine. And then the house it ends that I was on up 5 days ago, roughly. And then the homeowners come back and they inform me, you know, we really like the way you took care of us. We want to book you for next summer. And I just thought, wow. So, I mean, from a standpoint of house sitting, if you want to do that kind of thing, that's 8 months out of a year that's booked. And what's really nice about it is in all the cases, it's a straight across exchange. So I'm just taking care of the property and I'm not paying for rent or utilities or anything like that. So from a state of prosperity, some could say, wow, that's really cool. How'd you manage to pull that off? And so it's, I mean, the whole thing came about as a result of being stuck. I was in a city in Ensenada that I didn't like. was stuck in hotels after being forced to move out of my apartment because of noise problems. I didn't know what to do. And my coach at the time said, well, if there's only one place in the world where you could choose to live, where would it be? And I wrote down Buenos, and I remember thinking, oh my God, it's going to be brutally hot there in the summer. And then 2 days later, I posted an ad for house sitting, Western Canada, Western United States, Western Mexico. Within 1 hour, I got a hit for a house sit in a place called Mescales, 5 minutes south of Buenos. And then 2 days later, I got 2 more hits. One was for a place called Nueva Vallarta, also 5 minutes south, and another place called Sayulita, about 15 minutes north. And I did 2 of the house sits, and then the next year, I had this in my mind, yeah, I want to do it again, but I want a 6-month-long house in Buenos, and I got it. Wow. And then I got it again for this summer. And then they booked me again for a 3rd summer. So if you're thinking about prosperity, it's like, well, how did you do that? Well, number one, my coach asked me a question that nobody asked me, which was the right question. And then beyond that, writing down a clear answer. And then in terms of the mechanics of it, I wrote an ad based on copywriting. So what does that mean? It means that I wrote an ad based on the mindset of a homeowner. What do they want? It's like what we talked about earlier. What's in it for me, right? So I wrote it from that perspective, and it worked like gangbusters. So people talk about prosperity. Well, idea, the vehicle, the method. And I posted all my ads in Facebook groups, not on paid sites either. That was the other thing.
Right. And the other aspect of that is that, prosperity doesn't have to be about having cash. People might say, I need the cash in order to live in a house in Mexico. But in fact, you've shown that you didn't need to have the money.
No, you don't. Well, I mean, you might need it for a transitional point. That could be important, but all of a sudden, a major expense in my life is gone. I don't have to think about it.
That's it.
And in terms of the one place that I just finished, I've gotten to know the situation so well that it's like it's really not much effort at all. It's just. And it's a really sweet deal for me and the owners.
Fantastic.
So, so it's kind of cool.
So when we started out looking at prosperity, we've actually worked out that more along the lines of the vehicle's important, our passion and our purpose, all of those things work on that. And the prosperity is not the thing you focus on. The prosperity is the thing that actually comes when you've got all that aligned. When you're living it.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
So far. It seems to be. So, well, I mean, it's kind of funny because I thought about this for years and I really wanted to do it, but I couldn't think of how to make it happen until my coach asked me that question, and just everything suddenly fell together. It was like magic, really.
Excellent.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. And I think what you were saying earlier, Sean, about when we talked about anxiety and everything else and going out and talking to people or helping people, it's a good way. Think about that when you're in a business. People don't like being, or when I talk to people, I do workshops, and they say, I ask who's a salesperson, and just the sales people who actually sell an item will put their hand up. And I go, well, everybody else is a salesperson as well. You're selling your relationships, you're selling to your kids, eat their vegetables, they're good to them, they're good for them, all that. But then the salespeople, you take it another step and you go, right, you're no longer a salesperson, you're really a problem solver. If you're doing your job right, you're really focused on that other person and you're helping them. They will therefore, you will get what you want because you're able to help them get what they want. Sure. And as you've said, Nathan, with that social anxiety and with Sean's method of going out and talking to somebody and ask them how you can help them and introducing them to other people, it's no longer on you. It goes outside of you. And when you're giving and being not a servant, but being of service to other people, the natural thing is you're going to connect with them and prosperity is just going to naturally flow through.
I think you summed it up really well.
Yeah, there is another situation I remember encountering a number of years ago. It had to do with a young man in a school who was being bullied, this in Canada. And he did something that was counterintuitive that most people would not do, including myself. What he did is he became a doormat. And he stationed himself at one of the major doors to the school, and he opened the door for every single person who came and went. And he did that over a period of time. He became the most popular kid in the school, wound up being asked to give a major speech at the end of the school. he went on to a whole bunch of really great things, but he completely turned around the bullying thing, and he no longer had any problems. And it was one of the most brilliant things I'd ever seen. And so that, like, some of these people, oh, I have social anxiety. Okay, great, become a doormat. Seriously, go out and open doors for people.
Be of service.
Yeah.
Certainly allows it to take it out of you. Well, thanks very much, gentlemen, for being along today. I've really enjoyed it. And, as I keep saying on these things, the reason I run them is I just learn so much every time we do it. It's cheapest education I get.
Yeah. Me too. Very enjoyable. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fun. Thank you for having me.
Oh, mate, it's always a pleasure to have you guys here. So thanks again for being here, and to everybody else who's been listening in today. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next Campfire Panel Discussion. Bye for now.